If there was only one word you could choose to describe the combat in Wuthering Waves, I'd choose the word satisfying. In an action RPG game, combat is the foundation that the game is built on. You can't progress through the story or upgrade your characters without engaging with the combat. Every single action that a player takes, be it grinding echoes or farming ascension materials, works towards improving a player's ability to fight enemies. It's where you spend a majority of your time across your playthroughs, and Kuro hit it out of the park with this one. It is, without a doubt, one of the most engaging combat systems we've seen across the past few years, with a huge emphasis placed on timing-based mechanics like dodges and parries, alongside nuanced mechanics spread across individual kits that makes every single character feel incredibly unique. Combine these features together with the varied and complex movesets of enemies, you have a recipe for a fantastic experience that blends game knowledge, technical skill, and actual risk together into one amazing package. There's a reason why many believe Wuthering Waves has the best combat system in gacha gaming. Today we'll be discussing why this is the case, breaking down what makes combat so appealing in Wuthering Waves, why it's so fantastic compared to its peers, and the nuances across the game's team building that give it a lot more depth than you might think. As always, if you're enjoying this content, please make sure to hit that like and subscribe button. Wuthering Waves is a game where you can field up to 3 characters at once. And wow, do they take advantage of the party system. The game heavily emphasizes swapping to and from every member of your team to get the best possible performance out of your composition. The beauty of this system comes from Wuthering Waves' implementation of a unique resource called Concerto Energy. This energy is what drives effective and meaningful team interactions across the roster. Concerto Energy, when filled, gives the currently unfielded character the ability to cast their outro skill, while simultaneously swapping onto a new character. These outro skills typically inflict a huge amount of damage, or provide a damage buff to the newly unfielded character. When Concerto Energy is filled through actions on field, like attacking or casting abilities, you have to spread your gameplay across your team to gain access to these incredible buffs and attacks. What some players may not realize is that this Concerto Energy doesn't just provide buffs to your party. It's also a tool that streamlines the gameplay of your characters as well. This is because every single character in the game has an intro skill that's automatically cast whenever they're switched onto after an outro skill. These intro skills typically directly contribute to another unique resource that every character has, called a Forte circuit. This circuit, when filled, allows the character to use enhanced abilities that have an additional effect, and perhaps most importantly, generate more Concerto Energy. What this means is that there's a lot of incentive to master the individual movesets and rotations of your characters, not just your main DPS, but every single character in the party. When you factor in echo skills and advanced mechanics like swap canceling as well, there's even more room to progress your personal mastery of specific teams. Coming from games where the maximum skill expression you can have on certain characters is pressing 2 buttons and swapping off, this is an absolute breath of fresh air. However, we've only just scratched the surface. We haven't even talked about enemy design and how it elevates this entire system. At a baseline, Wuthering Waves is a game that challenges you. Enemies are incredibly aggressive, attack frequently, and in higher level content can oftentimes destroy you in as little as 1 or 2 direct hits. What this means is that there's more danger, more risks, and more challenges that'll cause mistakes as you engage with the game's combat. But with these challenges come opportunities, and capitalizing on these opportunities is what turns the game from an optimal rotation simulator into an actually engaging action RPG game. Coupled with these dangers are an array of mechanics that allow you to avoid damage completely. Things like dodging at the right moments, parrying an enemy's attack with your own, or breaking an enemy's poise by depleting their stagger bar, rendering them immobile while increasing their damage taken. When dodges build up concerto energy, while parries and intro skills deal additional damage to stagger bars, it's clear that there's a huge amount of interaction between your management of your team's rotations and your reaction to enemy moves. There's a lot of potential skill expression involved when it comes to conquering content. There's a huge amount of emphasis placed on understanding an enemy's moveset and the capabilities of your on-fielded character, knowing that some characters cannot parry while others can avoid attacks completely while in the air. It's a system that's intentional, and it's a system that gives a ton of control to the player, unlike other games with similar combat. However, one of the growing complaints when it comes to the combat system in Wuthering Waves is its lack of depth in team building, specifically when it comes to its implementation of elements, or in this case, attributes. Coming from prior game systems that involve the combining of two or more elements to create something bigger, Wuthering Waves' implementation, or rather lack of implementation of elemental reactions, is what some players find lacking. Attributes in Wuthering Waves might appear shallow at first, with characters dealing damage of a single attribute and enemies typically having a resistance to one or two of them. All it looks like on the surface is a roster check to ensure that you have a wide variety of main DPS characters. It's important to keep in mind that this is a gacha game, and this kind of roster check is pretty universal across the genre. However, the system is more than that. The game already possesses a fair amount of depth across its team building. At a baseline, the elemental system of Genshin Impact requires you to field two specific characters at once to use an elemental reaction in the first place, while Wuthering Waves instead focuses on pairing characters that synergize with each other through their outro skills or kit interactions. For example, Mortifi, a heavy attack buffer, will have his best performance with a team member who inflicts heavy attack damage, like Jian. However, Mortifi can also be used as a battery for Jinxi's damage, as he can provide coordinated attacks that fuel her forte circuit while making no actual use of his outro skills buff. You might not be using every single part of Mortifi's kit, but he can still function as a teammate across her compositions. In other games, this versatility is simply not there. Instead of characters interacting with colored auras on the enemy, characters interact with other characters' kits. You can use characters across a far wider variety of compositions in Wuthering Waves. This adds far more nuance to the gameplay than you might think. The problem is that these nuanced mechanics across team building are tied to new characters. We have to remember that Wuthering Waves is first and foremost a gacha game. There has to be incentive to pull new characters, and there is a lot of potential, especially from what we've seen with Jinxi's interaction with the roster, to add new mechanics that interact with the team or the enemy in new ways and add additional layers to the gameplay. But it's also important to recognize that there's a huge amount of depth already in the game's baseline combat. Having simpler teams that focus on the mastery of its core mechanics isn't a bad thing, and only promotes accessibility across the player base. Overall, there's a lot of complexity involved when it comes to the combat in Wuthering Waves. The magic occurs when you take all of these different mechanics and bring them together, creating an incredibly engaging experience that tests your personal mastery of individual character kits, your knowledge of enemy movesets, and nuances across team building. We're likely going to see more new playstyles and potential team compositions with new releases, and we've already seen that Kuro has a lot of creativity to work with. Hopefully, this overview was helpful in highlighting what makes combat in Wuthering Waves so great, and the amazing potential it has in the future. As always, if you enjoyed this content, please hit that like and subscribe button. Peace out.